Our next speaker is also a postdoc here at the Initiative on the Digital Economy, and he's been doing a whole series of projects looking at the skill content of jobs, which, as you know, is evolving over time. So please join me in welcoming Frank MacCrory.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for coming here and joining us today. I'm going to be talking about how skills and education are valued now in the second machine age with some joint work with George Westerman and with Eric. So we care about this because skills and education have been sort of the gateway towards economic security for quite a long time. Everyone believes you learn the right skills, you get some education, this gets you financially and economically secure. The problem is since the early 2000s, technology has been advancing at an astounding pace, and it seems like the rules for economic security just sort of changed without notice, and this has gotten some people quite upset with the way things are working. So we have these recession-proof economies, which is sort of the easiest way of looking at this, but we also have a lot of other indicators that there are some problems going on with the labor market, of people being prepared properly for the way things actually work in the labor market now, such as long-term unemployment and other metrics. We want to look at this problem. This is a very large problem that's affecting quite a lot of people, and we want to look at how technology itself is affecting the wages that these skills are attracting in the labor force, and which of these are actually complementing technology, which of these are actually going head-to-head against the technology and usually coming out losing, because the technology is getting faster a lot better than the workers are. And we also want to see how this is affecting the returns to education, which as an educational institution is something that's very important to MIT. So you can see in the little graph there is a swing of about 5% fewer people are actually working. So this is not a good thing. This is a lot of economic dead weight on the economy itself. Just simply putting those people back to work, that's like another 1 million people back at work, just by reallocating folks back to the people who had to have jobs who don't have them now. This is not even just growth of population or anything else. This is just like people who had jobs who were around who don't now. So we want to look at a lot of the sort of standard statistics that are used for labor economics, but we're taking a sort of a different way of looking at this. We're going to use machine learning ideas to sort of let the data tell us which of these things are important, what differentiates one job from another, as opposed to the typical way of doing this, which is to take a look at this set of data and we're going to say, okay, well, I think this is a type of a job and this is a type of job. We're going to let the data tell us what differentiates one job from another. So we took a lot of data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a lot of data from the US Census to get this stuff together. We're using two different measures of technical change, which is how much IT you actually use in your job directly, and also how much IT is used in your industry. And we used a technique called principal component factor analysis. I'll take a line of Sandy's, it's magic, it just works. No, I'll explain a little bit more about how that works. And we determine the effects using a technique called hedonic regression to show which of these skills are affecting your wages. So when we do the analysis on the skills that are actually used in these sorts of jobs, what happened, we came up with about 7 dimensions of what differentiates one job from another. And the way we did this is we force these to be, or the technical term is orthogonal, which means that if you had 2 jobs that were otherwise identical, but you changed this one dimension, everyone would pretty much agree that that's a different job. And I'll go through very quickly what the dimensions we saw are. First one's physical, which is pretty obvious. This is your strength, your ability, your dexterity sort of things. These all they tend to sort of move together. And if a job involved a lot of physical labor or did not involve a lot of physical labor, even if they were otherwise the same job, people will probably think they're somewhat different. The second most important factor that came up in differentiating was what we called equipment, which is largely tech savviness. This is your ability to troubleshoot, your ability to do systems thinking, your ability to design, your ability to select tools. So it's not necessarily a computer, but it is interacting with technologies and tools and systems. The third one is supervision, and this is getting stuff done through other people. It is not necessarily people who have a reporting relationship to you. This could be collaborating with peers. This could even be managing your manager. But this sort of skill of getting stuff done through other people, this is an important skill in the labor market. There is one that we call awareness. This is basically looking out, working outside. This is a whole cluster of skills and capabilities involved with that. Teamwork. This is the ability for yourself to function in the presence of other people. whether it's actual team members, whether it's angry customers, whether it's people who have just arrived, the coworker sitting next to you who's surfing when they're supposed to be working. So all those sorts of types of stressors and facts of dealing with people, those set of skills all come here. Perception is a sort of an important thing to have. This is the ability to sort of pull signal out of noise and the ability to focus on a single task amidst distractions. So this is another thing that turned out to be important. And then we have initiative, which is also a lot of times known as grit. This is basically getting stuff started and getting stuff done. So there are a lot of different talents that people can bring to a particular job. There is no one measure of skill. There is no one thing that says this is a better person for a job than this other person. So to give you a very, very quick look, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but we are not putting these jobs in categories like a lot of prior research did. We're actually rating every job on every single one of these dimensions. And some jobs are just objectively harder to do than others. If you look at the bottom, you can see if you set your expectations low enough, you can find some very, very low requirements in there. This is not to say that everyone is a crossing guard who was bad at these things. It's just saying the requirements for being a crossing guard are very low, and therefore the wages for being a crossing guard are going to be very low. So we want to, at a first result, we want to see, do these 7 factors actually mean something? Do they actually affect wages? And the way to look at this is like for an extra unit of supervision in the requirements for your job, you'll actually get paid more for having that. And this more or less comports with our expectations of what we thought these were going to work, except for that one at the end there, teamwork. Everyone says teamwork's really important. Everyone says we absolutely need to have teamwork. It just turns out that empirically we all want teamwork, we just don't pay for it. So this is it's sort of the flip side of what we were talking about the consumer surplus before, where we get all our free goods from Wikipedia and from Google searches. Well, employers are getting free teamwork. Now, because this is MIT and we want to look at how technology is affecting these things, this is nice to know. This can help guidance counselors all by itself. But we want to look at how technology has been affecting these sorts of things and how it changes the values of these skills. So the first group, it's kind of what we would expect. For supervision and equipment and initiative, like the more IT is involved in your job, the more valuable that skill becomes. So the first bar is low IT jobs. The middle one is sort of middle quintile and then the top quintile. As you can see, basically, the more IT intensive your job is, the more valuable your supervision skills are. And a lot of this has to deal with the fact of being able to leverage larger projects and things like that just through the technology itself. It's not particularly surprising that outdoor jobs don't really benefit, the skills for working with outdoor jobs don't really benefit from having high IT. That very large low bar might be a bit misleading because there just simply aren't that many jobs that are highly IT intensive and outdoors. You pretty much have surveyors, and that's about it. Physical has a really weird relationship with IT. So for jobs that really don't involve any IT at all, having strength and stamina probably is a good way of, augmenting your wages. At the very, very high IT jobs, we're talking about biological technicians, their dexterity and their ability to make small movements and enable the technology to get stuff done, being that last bit that gets the stuff working. Okay, that's a good thing to have. It's people in the middle who are sort of clobbered by the technology here. So these are the folks whose jobs are probably being replaced by machines. They're not the sort of thing where, the technology makes sense to be installed here, and now pretty much the people are competing against it. The last two here have a different pattern where there is some optimal level of technology sort of in the middle, and then it sort of drops off. So for perception type tasks and for teamwork type tasks, very, very low or very, very high IT is not good for you, but sort of there's like a Goldilocks zone in the middle. So when we talk about skill-biased technical change and the idea that skills are going to be affected by technology, not only are skills affected by technology, but there are multiple skills and there are multiple different patterns of interaction with those. Getting to education, we can see at a very, very high level here that basically having a college degree is good for you. But it's not a college premium. There's actually 2 distinct college premiums. The first one is having a degree. The second one is being in a job that requires a degree. They're actually not quite the same thing. There are actually some folks who are in jobs that say on paper that it requires a degree, but the person doesn't really have one. These are mostly people who work their way up through the ranks into some sort of a management job. On the flip side, we have these folks who went out and got a degree and then have a job that, at least on paper, doesn't require one. So these are for like managing a fast food restaurant, doesn't require a degree, but the people who do that job with a degree actually do earn more money. So the labor market is paying for that education. It's paying you a premium for that education, even if your job supposedly doesn't require a degree. And if you put the two together, of course, the folks who have a degree and degree-requiring jobs make a lot more money than people who don't. Of course, that top left one that you see there, that's roughly what people have been talking about as setting a new minimum wage. So as you can see, that number probably didn't just come out of nowhere. Now, if we want to look at how wages have changed, we were hoping for more dramatic results in this one. It just turns out the Great Recession was bad for everybody. But if you look at this a little bit closer, the folks in the college-type jobs fared a little less bad. But to put these in perspective, we want to know how many people are in each of these categories. So there are about 6 million people here who are in jobs that supposedly require a degree and actually don't have one. But what's actually more striking here is there are more people in jobs that don't require a degree but have the degree than people who require a degree in a job that requires a degree. So in a first order approximation, over half of the college degrees that we hand out in this country are wasted in some sense. So when we look at employment change, however, we can see definitely that the employment change is definitely skewed towards the folks who have the higher education. Now, if we want to look at this in conjunction with the skills data that we were talking about before, this is nice overall averages, but we want to look at which of these things is actually how important is this to determining your wages? And here we can use a measure called variance explained, or partial R squared for the statistics folks. So if you look at very, very few variables, you just basically look at gender and where someone lives, education appears to be the biggest driver of income. So the red portion here is how much is explained by how much education you have. If you account for people's experience, then suddenly, yes, education is important, but it's obviously not the only thing happening. When you control for those skills that I identified earlier, suddenly the education isn't as big a piece anymore. It turns out people are actually being paid for the stuff they learn in college, which is gratifying to the folks who are hiring them and educating them. That the skills that you learn in college actually are a big driver of why you're earning more. But notice that red area doesn't go away entirely. There's something that the labor market values in your ability to get accepted into college, get through the program, and actually come out with a degree, independent of what you've learned. You're demonstrating some level of grit or determination or ability to live away from home or whatever. That ability is actually rewarded in the labor market. So what can we actually do with these sorts of insights here? So when we're going to do interventions in the labor market, of course, the short-term thing is we have a very big problem with the long-term unemployed. So whatever we're going to try to do with interventions, we want to aim it there first. The market is saying these particular bundles of skills are not being valued. So we want to take a look at the persistently high unemployment, find what it is about these particular bundles that aren't being valued in the labor market, and we're going to find some way of helping those particular folks. So we'll aim there sort of first. But the insights here, once we're out of the immediate danger, and we're starting to deal with longer term things, that's where this guidance actually starts to help a lot more. So in the medium term, we can start reallocating folks who are offering their skills that are valued somewhere, but just not where they happen to be. Some folks with a simple change of occupation or a simple change of location could actually be earning a lot more money with the exact same skills that they already have. And there are also folks who have aptitude for relatively easily added skills we can actually augment folks that way as well. So there are relatively short training programs that can help people up their skills and so on. Now, the longer term, just simply reallocating people is not going to solve all of our problems. We do really need to reskill the workforce. And here we want to transition people towards jobs that are actually complementing the technology, not competing against it. We don't want to be training people for jobs that aren't going to exist in 5 years. We also don't want to be training people for jobs that, although they're going to exist, it's going to become sort of a niche sort of a thing. We want to actually look at not just growing jobs, but growing jobs that are actually going to be staying around. So we want to complement the technology. As the technology improves, your skills actually get more valuable. Not all these jobs actually require college degrees, but most of them require some kind of training. And there's actually some college degrees out there that don't really prepare you for these sorts of jobs at all. So we want to be sort of intelligent with aiming our innovation or interventions. So to conclude here, we looked at how technical change is affecting wages and earning power and so on. And it turns out that there isn't just one direction that this is working in. There's actually multiple different types of talents that people bring to the workplace, and each of them actually has its own little distinct pattern of how it's being affected by IT. I went over here about direct IT use. We also have data on how industry IT intensity affects. Those are much more monotonic, so I showed you the more interesting graphs here, but there's other data behind this to aim these things a little bit better. The most durable skill that we found, though, is initiative, that grit, the idea of getting stuff started and getting stuff done. That seems to be a very valuable skill pretty much anywhere that it's applied. And this is something that, we might not even wait until MBA programs to start trying to instill this in people. Okay. We also noticed that our equipment and initiative skills, they seem to be picking up some of the, this seems to be what people are learning in college, at least the people who are earning more because of their degrees. We noticed that there were two distinct college premiums. There's the getting yourself into a job that requires a degree, and then there's actually having a degree, and they're actually two distinct things. The real winners are the ones that can actually accomplish both of those things. We went through some intelligent targeting for labor market interventions and where to start and then where to go next and then where we actually have to end up. There's real, we can take different paths to get there, but we need to get to reskilling the workforce. And this can give some good guidance as to what sorts of skills we should be trying to instill in our young folks. And you don't want to be doing a job that this guy's going to be doing in 5 years. So you need to be able to work with people, but you also need to be able to work with the machines, like we saw with the Jibo earlier. And you also need to be not doing a job that's going to be done by a machine very soon. And in future work, this is an ongoing project. We want to look at how wages and employment are going to be affected not only directly in a particular occupation or a particular industry or a particular business, but how these things sort of ripple through the economy. Some of the largest employed occupations that we have are things like drivers and packers and things like. So when these jobs get automated, what happens when we have self-driving big rig trucks? What happens when we have self-driving taxis? How does this ripple through the economy? When these goods become free, which is good for their customers, but it also puts a lot of people out of work. So coming up with the ripple effects for this is actually an important part of this. And I just want to leave you with one parting thought. It's not, Henry David Thoreau said, it's not enough to be industrious, ants are industrious. What's important is what you're industrious about. Thank you.
And we have time for a question or two, if anyone got a question.
Yes.
Last year, David Deming did some very interesting research about the premium on social skills across the whole thing. And I'm wondering if jobs that value people with college degrees but don't require it, what they really value is the social skills you get in college. I see Eric nodding. I don't know if that means that you've thought about it and that makes...
We've thought about it a lot.
Yeah. And so the social skills, first of all, that overlaps with both the supervision and the teamwork, and a bit of an initiative. So that's actually gotten split out into several dimensions here. So we weren't looking at any one kind of skill. We were looking at multiple types of skills. And what people call social skills tend to split into both supervision and teamwork, and some of it goes into initiative. So there's that part of it. And we're seeing the parts of that get rewarded is the initiative part and the supervision part, not so much the actual teamwork part. There's additional results behind this, just for limits of time. They tend to be most valuable in high IT occupations, and yet the education premium tends to accrue to high IT jobs, which kind of makes sense because it takes training to learn how to use these sorts of machines. But it's not all skills become more valuable with education and skill and technology. It's that it's specific ones.
Social skills, it could be being good at communications and dealing with others. Those skills are, even if you are a gardener, mowing the lawn, the better your social skills, the more customers you'll get.
So this is, Irving, you have a way of getting right to the heart of it. This has been something that we've been thinking quite a bit about, in part because the Deming paper came out, and on the surface, it looked like there were some contradictory results that as you saw, the teamwork wasn't particularly valued. Deming said social skills were very valued. You dive in deeper, it turns out this ONET database that we've both been using is extremely rich, has many, many different ways of grouping things. And he picked out a few, he hand curated, picked out a few categories that he thought were important and defined those as his social skills. As Frank was saying, we went sort of more of a data-driven approach and let the principal components, let these characteristics emerge on their own. And the ones that emerged in our set were different than the ones that Deming said. Even though they have a sort of similar name, they didn't exactly overlap. And one of the things we're doing right now is to understand better some of the distinctions between these different ways of being social. And it seems that some of them are being much more valued than others are.
That's very also important because people are arguing, is it good to have a liberal arts education? And some people say, that's total bullshit, you shouldn't do that. It could be that that's absolutely wrong, that one of the things you get even in a liberal arts education, or especially, is the kind of social skills that will serve you well.
We don't know the answer to that for sure, but what's really important is having a good statistics education, and that's what we're working on right now. So we'll work on that because we're working on getting the data to speak about it. Thanks very much, Frank.